Welcome to another edition of Spits and Suds. So glad you can join us. I'm Gavin Spittle of 1053 The Fan. Thank you for listening and, most importantly, supporting Spits and Suds, DFW local hockey show where we talk Stars and NHL, and we're excited to have our Stars NHL Spits and Suds insider, Sean Shapiro, for his frequent visit. You can catch Sean on so many outlets. EP Rinkside is a terrific one, a real terrific website to check out. Shap Shots is his Substack. We'll talk about a great article that he wrote earlier. D Magazine, Sean is featured there along with Robert Tiffin and David Castillo for all their work with D Magazine. He also co-authored 2 books on the Stars. If you go to Amazon and just Sean, S-E-A-N, Shapiro, you will see his books come up, and also starred as the goalie in the Late Game movie. But most importantly, the new thing I'm bringing up, the Daniel Craig of backyard hockey rinks, which is a deep cut reference for those that don't know. He is known as the ice guru, Daniel Craig, most notably with some outdoor classics, but also longtime Edmonton Oilers ice maker. And now I deem Sean Shapiro the backyard guru. Hi, Sean.
Gavin, that's you're way too kind in your intro, so thanks for having me. Just way too kind, man.
David Castillo would say, how do you do that prep? He says, where do you find time to find these things? And I was just thinking today, because I saw your picture and just a real nice sheet you had out there, and I was like, hey man, he is old school. That is I don't know what you use for a Zamboni in your backyard, but other than that, I'm totally in on your rink.
Yeah, we got we have today will be after this afternoon. I'll pick up. Told my son, my 4-year-old, we'll pick him up a little bit early from daycare today, and we'll do some extra skating out there today. So it's a blast, man. It really is.
That is so cool. Right shot or left shot?
He is. So his sister is a left shot. Dean, my son, is not. It's still pretty ambidextrous when we play with the mini sticks in the backyard. He's not. He's at. Okay. He's now. He has kind of unlocked a bit of the. I'm not sure whether he likes hockey or realizes that this unlocks a bit of the I get to stay up late code. But the other night he was like struggling to go to bed, and he's like, but Dad, I want to stay up and watch hockey with you. And so
that would make me melt.
So we went downstairs and we watched the end of the second period between Columbus and Toronto.
Wow. What a kiddo. All right, final thing, what is the goals against average against the kids?
Both kids have when we play we tend to both be I'm not playing goalie against the kids, so it's more of just hanging out with them and shooting the puck. A lot of the just kind of keeping it fun out there. There's one of the ridiculous little games that I played with my daughter out there is so like if anyone has kids, up until a certain age they use the lighter blue pucks, right?
Yeah.
So we got a couple of those in the. We got a couple of those in the bag, and so we'll we'll lay the pucks out in a couple of different piles and scatter them over the ice, and then play. We'll call it a game we invented called Blue Puck Black Puck, where basically I'll yell out a color of a puck, and then she'll run to whichever color and then shoot that one into the goal and everything like that. So we have some fun out there.
Nice. Well, you and I got our wish as Lian Bichsel gets the call back up. So really timely against a Vegas team with some good size. So really excited to see. He said he learned some things down in Texas and really tried to improve his game. Seems as though the attitude has been great, and excited to see him back.
Yeah, and he was. I looked up the numbers yesterday. Like he was. I don't have the exact average, but he was going like 25, 23, 24 minutes per night. Type of workload with Texas, where it was like this guy is playing. he's gone down, he's got opportunity, and he's taking advantage of it. And so to me, he's earned it. He had already earned it, and now it's um the other big thing I think from a Stars perspective is I really feel like this is a test out and see are you because I already think he should have stayed up in Dallas. We've talked about that before on this show, but to me, he is now in a spot where I think this is you've got your spot. I mean, you have your chance now. Now go win it. And I think he's going to get that opportunity now. That's my hunch here because I think this is the Stars have had the Matt Dumba experiment hasn't worked very well. Brendan Smith has been fine, but it hasn't been anything more than I expect Brendan Smith to be. And so I think this is a big opportunity for the kid, and big opportunities come against big opponents. So let's see what he does tonight.
And what do they do roster-wise as far as – so I haven't looked at what the pregame skate was as far as who was skating together.
Yeah, they had an optional this morning, so there wasn't a full skate of lines and everything. But Bichsel was taking rushes or whatever in practice yesterday, like a proper defenseman. I think Smith was skating as a forward, so I expect him to be in tonight. And it will be to me and Gavin. It's not. I want to be clear. And I talked about this actually in the piece we're going to talk about in a little bit. I'm not reporting at all that the Stars are trading Matt Dumba, but when you look at where things are going and where they need to go and the cap space and things like that, and knowing that Jim Nill is an honest person about where of what the team needs and to move on from things and everything like that, I have a hard time seeing Matt Dumba still on this team after the end of February. And I don't know how they make it work, and I don't know whether it's a salary retention or how they do it, but it goes all the way back to Jim. Jim has done this before. He had when John Klingberg's career started in Dallas, it started with a move to trade Sergei Gonchar to Montreal. I think it was to Montreal, right? To open up the space. So there is past history here, and I expect to see something like that happen sooner than later. It will be interesting to see when it happens. As Jim told me last week, right? It's the whole everyone's kind of waiting on Four Nations to figure out needs and this and that and everything like that. So I just hope Bichsel goes out and presses tonight, because I think that could be one of their best internal solutions right there, is to have him come out, seize that spot, and then you don't have to spend assets on defense. Then you're really cooking elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, we're coming up on the anniversary, January 30th, where the Vancouver Canucks sent Bo Horvat, and I'm using that as an example, to the Islanders, because today I wanted to talk to you about what to give. We always talk about getting, let's get Miller from Vancouver. Or Seth Jones. Let's get, so we mention all these names, but we don't talk as much about what it would take and giving. So I mentioned that anniversary because Bo Horvat at the time, very good for Vancouver, captain of the team. So what did the Islanders have to give to get Bo Horvat? And just as a refresher for Stars fans, it was Anthony Beauvillier, Atu Rutu, and a protected 2023 first-round draft pick. So I also pulled all the Stars draft picks for the next upcoming years. And this upcoming year, they have a first, a third, a fifth, a sixth, and seventh. The second round is part of the Max Domi old trade. 2026, a first, second, third, fourth is still up in the air, fifth and a sixth. And then 27, 28, you have all of your draft picks. So that's kind of an overview as far as currency with draft picks. And Seth Jones was in the news this week as far as Chicago possibly putting them up. And it got me thinking, Sean, when you mentioned Matt Dumba, people talking about Chicago needs to take on some of that Seth Jones salary. Wouldn't it make sense that maybe Matt Dumba becomes that salary?
Maybe. To me, it's See, I have and some people, because David and Robert have both written about Seth Jones and where he fits and potentially, and I think in a vacuum, Seth Jones actually would fit in Dallas. I think that is no dispute for me on that at all. I struggle with seeing the Seth Jones math work just because he makes that 9.5
Yeah.
million, and I how much are you going to get Chicago to retain? And you have to remember that I think people like there are other like it's not just cap hit and dollars and all that stuff. There's other things you have to account for too, right? So each NHL team gets 3 retention spots for retained salary, and Chicago's already using one. And so if they retain salary on Seth Jones and they do it for 5 more years, that's something you're gonna have to deal with and work for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And if all of a sudden you're sending Seth Jones to a divisional rival, someone who you would hope, if you're Chicago, that you are competing with in 3 to 4 years in the Connor Bedard window, whatever you want to call it. Why? I feel like that comes with a premium. Like if you're Davidson, the GM of the Blackhawks, I don't know why you go and make things easier for a divisional opponent. And I'm not a big believer that you don't trade in the division. Like I think you make the best trade available, but I do think it comes into play where it's like, okay, there are things at play here that go beyond just the cap hit and the fit. So I also don't see. I also, from a Chicago perspective, I don't know. The Dumba to me is more so of going somewhere where there's a team that looks at him as this guy can help our bottom pair, and it goes somewhere like it's a weird thing, right? Like the Dumba is a seller / trader like Dumba is something you're selling. You're kind of a seller at the same time as being a buyer at the same time. You're trying to sell Dumba to be a bigger buyer. And I just don't know how that works with Chicago. It's a fascinating dynamic.
Yeah. No, I definitely I understand what you're saying.
I hope that makes sense. I know I rambled a little bit.
It does.
But
it does. Like, I just wonder maybe if like the Stars could counter if I was and say like if I'm Chicago, I'm like, okay, I'm taking this player off your hands, and at the same time, I am avoiding that payout over 5 years. Then I'm just basically saying, yeah, I'm taking on this player, and it helps them because they get rid of Seth Jones and that salary cap figure, and they only have Dumba essentially for a year and a half now.
Yeah, I just see no way Dallas can take on that Jones cap hit
while signing who they have to sign.
Yeah, you have to sign Wyatt Johnston. You have to I just see no way that works financially, or it doesn't mess up the long-term plan. Now, let's be clear on something else, because we know it's the place Jim Nill loves to dive into the most is how much does Jim Nill love the buyouts? The guys right off buyouts, right? Right,
yes,
Gavin? So
yes, he really does.
So would it surprise you at all if Seth Jones maybe got bought out by Chicago in this year or next, and at some point is all of a sudden ends up as a star off the buyout? Because that is way more up Jim Nill's playbook to get Seth Jones for me.
That makes sense. That absolutely makes sense. And I think, this would be an interesting destination due to Jones's familiarity, his offseason home. So there's a lot of things that Seth Jones would probably like about being in the Frisco, Dallas area.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's get into your Substack, because I think this is a really interesting article, and I want to take some quality time on this. So you wrote on your Substack, which came out, about the sports media world and how crazy it's become. And this came from the Steve Dangle podcast, a very popular hockey podcast. And on that podcast, one of the hosts, Adam Wilde, made a comment regarding Jason Robertson, that he was difficult to work with and potentially had someone in his orbit that would make the Dallas Stars forward, as you put, unattractive to the Vancouver Canucks. So people, credit to you, Sean, reached out to you and said, Sean, what's going on? Have you heard this? So you had multiple people. So then you addressed it. And why don't you take it from there as far as how interesting the sports media landscape has been? Because nowadays you say something and it's almost certain that what you say or retort or no, that's not the case will automatically get back to the person who initially said it.
Yeah, and it's the whole and it's, as I kind of put in that piece, and it's the whole spot where it's never been, this is good, right? It's never been easier to get a platform, because anyone, if you're willing to put in the work in, right? There's a lot of the guardrails, Gavin. There's a lot of the past barriers that were there, right? Where let's use you for example, Gavin, for something you deal with. You work at a station where, say someday, you need to hire a new host, and I won't even say a sport because all of your people are good right now, and you don't want to be in that space anytime soon. Say you need to hire a new host.
Yes.
In the past, in the previous era, you'd be like, all right, well, I know of people who have worked at radio stations, and that's my pool, right? That's where people have clips from, right?
Yep.
We're at the spot now where if you're smart and you go start a podcast and do something, you can show off your talent to the world.
Absolutely.
And you can go find that person.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if you've made hires like that yet or in the past, but at some point, right, Gavin, if either you have or you will make a hire like that at some point in the role you're in, where it'll be like, hey, this guy may not be, this guy or girl might not be a radio person from a traditional legacy, whatever you call it, radio, but they are they're damn good at talking about this, and we know from this. And so there is a great, what the Steve Dangle podcast is it's something where it's a guy Steve is a huge Leafs fan and has turned it into a business, and that's really impressive.
Yeah.
Where it starts to become weird in this business that we're in now is the line for who actually has information and who actually reports things and everything like that has never been more blurred, right? It's one of the reasons when we're on this show, there's many times, Gavin, where I'll be like, hey, I want to be clear. I'm not reporting. I'm not reporting this. I'm just saying, it would be like I just said before with the Matt Dumba thing. I'm not saying the Stars are going to trade Matt Dumba. That is not what I'm reporting. I am saying I just don't. This is combination of what I would do and trying to read tea leaves. This is me and you talking on a podcast about it, not a. And so when you go and say, and you try, and you effectively say, and you have a large platform, I looked up, they've got typical YouTube episode has about 45,000 views, right?
Yeah, solid.
Yeah, really good. And they're 10th or 15th, somewhere between 10 to 15 largest podcasts, hockey podcasts for views in the US, right? And they're in Canada. So I don't know what their views are going to. When you go and say, Jason Robertson is difficult to work with, I've heard this rumor and everything like that, you're legitimizing that. And I think that's one of those things where in media we kind of there's too many times we get lost that our words, you gotta, people don't, and I'm going to sound like an old curmudgeon on this, but people don't have enough training anymore. I think that's the other part of it, right? I think it's great because people can come work their way up and do that. But there's also some other things that have gotten lost, where one of the things that I think I have success in this business is I still take a lot of those lessons from legacy media, from working at a paper, where, you know what, are you gonna are you gonna go report something and you got an editor saying okay, who's your source? Back this up for me. Go handle that. And it's a weird spot. I don't know the right answer. I'm not trying to pretend to know the right answer. It's just something that it's something I was thinking about last night. I was driving home from the Detroit Montreal game and how this all goes and everything like that. And it's I think podcasts are great. It is definitely a benefit to the hockey media and sports media coverage, 100%. There's also this line of how do we find the right way to kind of be professional, not
Right.
professional, but be responsible, right? So,
Well, I think one of the issues,
I'm
Sean.
clearly. Someone told me the other day, and I agree with them. I'm a much more succinct writer than I am a speaker.
No,
So.
no, not at all. No, I think that's a really interesting subject. I would also add that I think the payoff is much bigger than the penalty. And I use that because if for
That's a good way, yeah.
if he was right, then he gets all the credit. Wow, well, he had it. He talked about that. But will people remember and say, "No, you were wrong about this"? And that to me is something that people aren't necessarily as worried as they once were regarding the penalty. Therefore, they are not trained enough to check with multiple sources. So I'm very fortunate in this chair where the Spits and Suds family makes up some amazing reporters. You are one included. And many times, I'll ask questions and try to get some background before I phrase things. And if you're not available, then David's available or Robert's available. I mean, they're terrific. Stephen Meserve down in Texas has been an amazing resource for me. So like different people, because I think that's the proper way to go about doing it. So at least you have some background to educate yourself as far as throwing out your opinion. But yeah, I agree with you. That is a very tough thing to throw out there because you're not talking about play on ice. You're talking about attitude in the room. And that is very, very dangerous because we've seen what's happened in Vancouver. And, that might be self-made, but it blew up. And that's what everyone talks about when they talk about the Vancouver Canucks this year. And now people are like, what's the future of Rick Tocchet? It kind of, it explodes. So I think it was a really interesting thing that, you brought up. And yeah, I don't know. So when you retorted it, did they say anything back to you?
No, they have not. And now that's their prerogative. That's up to them and everything like that. That's completely up to them. And it's the reason that before talking about it, I had someone reach out to double check to see if there was any want to clarify or anything like that. And so that's kind of the way because I believe that's something that is important. I believe I would hope if I say and I've been open about this, if I say something that somebody disagrees with or whatever, I'm okay. I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong. That is something that I am. If all of a sudden if Adam reaches out to me and says, "Hey, you know what? I misspoke," I'll make sure to put that out there. Hey, he misspoke, and that's the right thing to, and that's the right thing to do or whatever. It's the other thing about it, Gavin, that really just kind of I was texting with a guy who covers the Wings up here, named Sam Stockton, and I intentionally shouted Sam out.
Yeah, you did a good job with that. Yep.
And Sam is he's very similar to our pal Robert. Just he's up here in Detroit and he does some stuff for the Hockey News. But Sam is and not to give Sam's full situation away, but Sam does the work for the Hockey News. Does his own Substack based on Michigan hockey, but he also has to do some other work to pay the bills because the business model for the Hockey News sites is not one that is a full-time job, and so he puts in the work. And him and I were texting a little bit after I published the piece about things, and I just think there's too many times right now where we have the line. I just wish people sometimes would in our business, and it's just in general. And I know I'm sounding like I'm coming off a soapbox, and I need to be better at it sometimes too. I'm not going to lie that I'm perfect, but I think there's times where we need to sometimes say, "Hey, this is my opinion, and this is what I'm reporting."
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we don't get that, and then in the quick nature of and even some people who like we get kind of the quick nature of the aggregation business that exists, and I understand that's how people get clicks and that, and even though I think that's a whole nother conversation for another day, Gavin, is whether the click based model works or not. That's a whole nother.
Yeah,
there's
no,
there's a lot of things that you and I'm sure we could go way inside baseball on this that people would I don't know how many people would just start snoozing once they heard us talking, but it's the whole, oh man, I'm gonna aggregate this, not take credit for it, because I think a lot of aggregators have
right.
gotten a lot better, but there's things where it's like, okay, this is not the original author is sometimes things get through and it's not from the original author anymore.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's
We face that here at the radio station where Jerry Jones
yeah.
will say something and it says Jerry Jones told the Dallas Morning News because the Dallas Morning News wrote about it. And it's like, well, that's not the original source, but I mean,
Yeah.
it is an interesting, and I honestly, I don't know if readers care at some point. They just want information. And so that's one of the things that you go back and forth and fight. You also did point out Robert Tiffin, starsthoughts.com. Also want to plug a really interesting article today, Indie Magazine. Please check it out, completely free. And Robert talks about the Stars penalty kill, and he goes into depth about the penalty kill, tops in the league and why. And I thought that was really interesting. They've always had a really good penalty kill the past few years, but tops in the league right now. So just wanted to plug Robert because I know that you're close with him. I'm close with him as well. He does a great job. And I am like actively, like I was at a dinner a couple of weeks ago, Sean, and there were a couple Stars fans and they were asking me questions. And I'm like, you got to check out starsthoughts.com. And they're like, what's that?
Go follow
Yeah.
Robert. Right now, and I haven't even told Robert this. I don't know if he's considering it or not, but like it's his website is at some point like my once again it's Robert's story to tell and everything like that on his situation. But like I just hope my dream is that there's a way where this can be Robert's job.
Yeah,
That
I agree.
that this is the spot where he can cover this team and give Stars fans a bit of the coverage they deserve from a beat writer. And I just hope the model is there to figure it out. I don't know what that model is. That's the other thing that I wanted to just bring up, Gavin, with that piece that I wrote talking about kind of the state of the sports media industry is, man, there's what you and I are talking about right now and the issues that we tackle and figure out and what the challenges you have as a radio station now versus like there's going to be something new. There's going to be something new next year you deal with. Like, I mean, right now this entire industry is dealing with how do we handle the fact that Twitter algorithm is all gunked up, right? Like Twitter was never, to be clear, and so I don't know how people who live in the sports media content business or whatever will know a little bit of this, but the whole like Twitter was never a great driver of clicks. Honestly, it actually wasn't. It was always, Facebook
was good for a while.
Yeah, Facebook was good, but like Twitter now, the algorithm has gotten worse. Where, like, I'm not going to give all of my stuff out this, but like when I write a piece on my Substack, right? I will get if a story gets 4,000 views, just to give people an idea of what it looks like. So if a story gets 4,000 views, I'll get maybe 120 of them from Twitter, and that's it. Like you're talking about like an algorithm that is just it killed links and it doesn't. So that's a challenge that people like. I had this call I had a call today with my with some people over at Elite Prospects today, and we were talking about we used to use Twitter as a big way to put things out, and it's just not working. Like the drive, and that's an account with 100-something thousand followers, right? And it's not driving actual back to the site. So how do you handle that? There's so many things in sports media that change all the time, and it makes us like it makes all of us like rookies and not experts all at the same time, right, Gavin?
Absolutely.
Like at some point there'll be like I'll occasionally talk to kids where I went to college and they'll ask like, oh, how do you do this? I'm like you're the like the kids who are coming up now, they've got like full blown social media classes in
Yeah.
college. I'm like, you know that better than I do. That's I'm a I'm a weirdo that's still I'm a weirdo that doesn't understand all of that stuff still. I just
Yeah.
And so it's like I am this whole this plus this stuff is like sports media, where it's going, all of this stuff. Obviously it fascinates me because it's my business and my career, my livelihood, but also because I don't know where it's going. Like it's like I was like I've got one of my best friends is a banker, right? And I know every industry changes and everything like that, but one of my best friends is a banker. Um, if a kid asked my friend, "Hey, what do you do for a living and how does your job go?" Like that job will be semi-similar in 20 years, right? Like that's
True.
like that's the way it's been. If someone says, "Hey, I want to go and be in sports media," man, I have no idea what this field's going to look like, and we're all going to have to evolve and adapt and all that.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
No, absolutely. Hey, let's end on this real quick.
Yep.
Dan Rosen came out with an article on NHL.com. Stars Oettinger motivated to be the number one goalie for U.S. at Four Nations Faceoff. And what's interesting,
it's a nice sentiment.
It really is. So Ottinger's quoted in this, and he tells them about Connor Hellebuck. He's at the top of the mountain right now. That's where I want to be. I want to get my game to that level to be looked at like him. What's interesting is Dan says he's not far off, which is why the goaltending decision U.S. coach Mike Sullivan will make before the tournament opener against Finland might not be as easy as it appears, considering all the analysts, some of which goes back a few years. Listen, it's an interesting article, and I'm really fired up that Jake Oettinger wants to be there. But to me, if I'm wearing the Team USA sweater in a couple of weeks, and I better see the Winnipeg starting goalie in net. And I love myself. Like, people accuse me of being biased toward Jake Oettinger, but I'm just like, give me Connor Hellebuck against Finland.
So I was listening to, I was listening on the drive home from the Montreal-Detroit game last night. I was listening to the PDO cast, which my pal Dmitry Filipovich does up in Vancouver. And great show, really good. Like if you're looking for a good like general hockey podcast, that like listen to Dmitry in the PDO cast. And he had Kevin Woodley on, and Kevin is one of the utmost goalie experts in the NHL. Yeah, Kevin also based in Vancouver. Does a lot of goalie stuff for NHL.com, has his own site, In Goal Magazine, In Goal Media, and he dropped this stat that was wild to me about Connor Hellebuck last night. So you talk about a goalie's job, right, Gavin, is to win in the biggest moments. And so let's right now, and that's playoffs, but like in season, right, what are the biggest games for the Jets? They're the divisional games, right?
Yes.
As of the listening to this podcast last night driving home, the stat from Kevin, against Central Division games, Connor Hellebuck this season has a .953 save percentage and 5 shutouts.
Wow.
So you're like if that's what he's doing against if that's what he should be the MVP.
Yeah.
Like he should be the league MVP. Like that's what he's doing against the Central, and that's what you're telling, like, it's a nice sentiment. And I actually bet Oettinger will start a game. I bet they go Hellebuck 2 games and Oettinger 1. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens, but there's no way that Connor Hellebuck is not number 1 with the only way that Jake Oettinger is starting a game of consequence, and by consequence I mean the final, is if what happens when is if you get something similar to what happened to Canada in the 2010 Winter Olympics in Vancouver, where Brodeur started the tournament, struggled, and then they went to Luongo, right? Like it's going to have to be like Hellebuck's going to have to give up that net. So,
yeah, no, it's really interesting. Side note, I keep bringing it up on Spits and Suds, but I really want to do the PR for locally the NAHL, North American Hockey League, because on the front page, I'd be like Connor Hellebuck, former goalie in the NAHL. Like, not a lot of people know that he played right here in Texas. that was his way of coming up. So, yeah, it's like I said, it's great for Jake to aspire. I'm excited that he's fired up. Maybe that's some great motivation for him all year. We had talked about that in the
Yeah.
offseason.
Yeah.
You can tell how fired up he gets when he plays Minnesota, in Boston, because he played for Boston first. There are certain places, and he fully admits that he gets fired up when he plays against Connor Hellebuck. So I think it's terrific. And honestly, Sean, I also think it's terrific that they're going to be able to spend some time together.
Yeah. And it's the other thing about just like his preparation and everything like that. I think for Jake, the Four Nations thing is there's no chance. Let's just call it what it is, right? Like there's no chance. It's got to be Hellebuck playing himself out
Right.
with a bad start, right?
Yes.
Like, for Jake, for me, the realistic conversation is: can you outplay? Can you play your way into the Olympic conversation? Because there's actual time and everything like that. So if you play your way and you use Hellebuck as your side by side that you're trying to compare yourself to, if you match Connor Hellebuck shot for shot for the rest of this season, and then you're matching him shot for shot next year, you know what? Then there might actually be a tough decision. But there's not enough time.
Yeah.
And I get the other thing, just like we talk about how media works, right, Gavin? NHL.com is a editorial arm of the NHL. I have worked for NHL.com before as a freelancer and a contractor. The job it is part of the marketing arm. It is journalism, but it is also effectively part of the marketing arm, and that's fine. That's how I'm okay with that. I don't have an issue with that. It's just like, Mike Heika, for example, does tremendous work for Dallas Stars.
Yes.
For DallasStars.com. Now, the other thing people have to remember is Mike Heika's paycheck comes from the Dallas Stars. So while Hikes, I think, is a very fair individual in his coverage, and I think he's very fair in how he goes about things and everything. He is not. His job is not to, like, the Stars don't review his work before it's written. I'll be clear on that. But there's also a understanding and a social contract of when you are the full-blown team employee, you have certain rules you live by on what you can cover.
Yes.
And with NHL.com, part of their job right now is to promote this tournament. It's boring. It's more exciting to create and I think Dan does some good work. I love that Jake's using it as motivation, but it's also story driven. And hey, we need as many stories as possible to promote this tournament.
Yeah.
And like, I was in Detroit. Yesterday there was Nick Katsanika, who is based here in Detroit and is a really good writer. Once again, does great work. Works for the league now, doing a story on Dylan Larkin and getting ready for him to be on Team USA and everything like that. And as I joked to Nick about it, as he was asking about it, I'm like, you can find a positive story about all 32 teams if you look hard enough. So.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're absolutely. I mean, look, San Jose is at the bottom, and everyone's like, San Jose is ahead of everybody as far as rebuilding.
Yes, exactly. It's you just don't want to be in the mushy middle. The mushy middle is the worst.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Well, whoever said that you're a better writer than orator, they're wrong. You're good at both. So take that.
Sean I am a better writer than speaker. I will admit that. I will say that. But
I think today was a fascinating Spits and Suds. I really do. I really do. And you know what? Sometimes, yes, Spits and Suds listeners, I do this for my personal enjoyment as well, because I love talking about the great game, but I love deep behind the scenes dives that Sean and I get to do.
Let me share one more thing with you. Okay. So I was in college. When I was in college, and you talk about like feedback and where things go in this business, and I don't know if anyone's listening to this show and wants and feels like they want to go into this field. For me, one of the best moments for me of my career that like I thought about, that was like an eye-opening thing. So I was a sophomore in college. I was at Bowling Green, and I had a guest professor by the name of Chris Ekstrand. And Chris was was just like a guest professor for this Journalism 200 class. He wrote for NBA.com, and he also did some NBA scouting work. And so he was someone the basketball side of things, but he was someone who worked in where I wanted to go. And he was a guest professor, so he had a bit of that. He told it like it was, right, Gavin? There's sometimes it's so, and so he told me, and this is, I'm a sophomore in college, and I get told that, you know what, for your age right now, you're an A-level reporter. Your reporting chops are great, but man, you're a B- at best writer. And he told me that, and I was 19 years old or whatever it was. Like, that was, you can imagine, like, that was a moment for me that was like, geez, I'm not hot crap or whatever.
Right.
I'm allowed. This is a podcast. We're not on FCC rules.
Yeah.
So like, that to me was an eye-opening moment of, like, I took that feedback as a 19-year-old, 19, 20-year-old, however old I was as a sophomore in college, and I'm like, I got to work on this. And that's the thing that if you're listening to this and you want to get into this field and you want to write or whatever, like, look for harsh feedback. Another piece of feedback I got was harsh and reminded me of how this world works. As I was around a similar age, can't remember which exact season, I'm at a Michigan Bowling Green football game at the Big House, and I go and ask Larry Lage, who still covers sports for the Associated Press, based here in Michigan, and I was talking to him, and I asked him what advice he would have. Like, I'm the dreamy-eyed college sports reporter. Oh my God, this is amazing and everything like that. And he asked me what my major was, and I told him it was journalism. He said, make sure you get another degree that you can fall back on, because you will fail.
Oh,
so, and it was another, like, it was just kind of, and it was another one of those, like, harsh, like,
yeah.
And I'm not saying you need harsh feedback. I'm not saying that that's what's required, but I think the important thing is to take those, to seek that out and listen to it.
Yep.
And then find ways to apply it, because it is a lovely, wonderful field. I live at the kids' table of life, Gavin. I'm enjoying myself right now on a Friday afternoon. You and I are talking hockey, and this is quote unquote work.
Yeah.
This doesn't feel like work at all. So it is amazing, but you have to realize kind of what it takes to realize a little bit of the, people are going to tell you you're stupid. People are going to think they're smarter than you.
Yes.
And you have to, if you can handle that and take the feedback that gets there, you're going to do better.
No matter how many trophies you have on the wall, people will always think that they know better than you. That's
exactly.
That's so true. Just a quickie for you. My first break in college hockey, I was asked to fill in for UMass hockey. They were at Boston University. This is pre-internet, so I got the lineup sent to me via fax, and I tried to memorize everyone on both teams, because back then you just didn't have the same technology. Well, I get to the rink, nobody told me. The play-by-play was on not center ice, not well above the ice at center ice. It was on one side of the rink. I couldn't see the other side. So I am really, really struggling, and this is my first opportunity. And one of the toughest moments was after the first period. We go to break, and the analyst for the games leans over and says, "Do you want me to take over?"
Oh no.
Yes. And I allowed it.
Yeah.
So, because I was embarrassed that I couldn't do a good job. Side note, years later, because Mark Vandermeer, the play-by-play host of the Houston Texans, oversaw UMass athletics as far as on the radio. Years later, he's sitting in Sports Radio 610 in Houston's meeting, and he is being introduced to the new program director, the head guy of, he's the morning show host of the station, and his name's Gavin Spittle. And he's like, where do I know that name? Where do I know? And all of a sudden it clicked. It's like, oh my God. Like, so I had to prove to him that I wasn't awful like I was at play-by-play. But, you got to pick yourself up and learn. And, there I realized, like, okay, I don't think play-by-play is my gig. There might have been circumstances involved, but it was just it's a good learning experience. So when somebody kicks you, you just got to, you got to get up and say, okay, what is my niche?
And the other thing too is like, don't be afraid to reach out to people. Like,
Yes.
honestly, like one of the reasons that you and I do this show now, Gavin, is after I had the unplanned outlet change.
Yes.
You and I just messaged back and forth and said, "Hey, let's do something," right?
Yeah.
And like I had like one of the other like mentors in this business for me was a man by the name of John Lowe, who was the Detroit the Tigers beat writer for the Detroit Free Press. And John is actually, if you want to talk funny analytics, John was a little bit of an old school guy, but John is also the one who invented the quality start stat in baseball.
Actually. Oh, wow. All right.
So he's and John was now John lives in I think he lives back in Southern California now, is retired and everything like that. But John spoke to a journalism class of mine in either my freshman or sophomore year of college, can't remember which, and afterwards, I went up and got his business card, and he was before he was a baseball writer, he was a hockey writer in LA. He had covered the Kings for the LA Daily News, and he was just a big hockey fan who loved watching hockey outside of baseball season. And so throughout college, there would be times where John would drive down to Bowling Green. It's about an hour and a half from Detroit, for people who don't know their Midwestern geography. He would drive down from Detroit to Bowling Green, and there's this little Chinese buffet place. And we'd go to this little Chinese buffet restaurant at like 5:15, 5:30, talk about stuff and pick his brain. And then I'd go cover the hockey game, and he'd watch the hockey game. And then we would probably do that about 3 to 4 times throughout the year, just like throughout the Bowling Green hockey season. And he would come down and we'd chat things out. And it all started because he spoke to a class, and I took the time to go and just introduce myself and get his name and number and email, and he was friendly. So it's the whole thing of like this to me, it's all about how you treat other people. It's all about that. I was texting with Mike Palucci this morning after I wrote that piece, just to tell him like,
Greatness.
Hey, I really appreciate all the stuff he does at D Magazine.
Yes.
A lot of that stuff I talked about, where it's who knows where and what and how this business works. I think Mike is one of the really good ones and runs things the right way at D. And so I texted him, just tell thank you. So if you want to be, I mean, if you're listening to this, you're probably a hockey fan, but if you're listening to this and you want to go into anything in sports media or whatever, you want to be if you want to go into radio, if you want to go to writing and there's someone you want to talk to, just reach out to them, and you can always do that. I think people get a little bit, there's a natural like scaredness of like, oh my God, who are those people going to talk to me? And if they don't talk to you, they're not worth your time.
I totally agree, especially when it comes to hockey. If someone, sends me a message, I feel like it's an honor that you're asking,
Oh yeah.
I mean, I will do a deep dive. I will look up the information, and I will try my best to get back to you. Because like, to me, that's an honor that you're asking me with everyone else out there, what's your opinion on this or whatever. And we get such good feedback on this show after the games, where people just throwing out their opinions, and it's great that they have a voice.
Yeah. So it's as I said several times in this show, it's so great that there's opportunities for people to develop and build a voice right
Heck
away.
Yeah.
And so take advantage of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What a great program today. Just very interesting topics, and that's why we have Sean Shapiro on. Always great. And Sean and I have had a relationship for, 4 years and stuff like that. So. So now Sean will go to his backyard. He will put a fresh sheet of ice, and he will play black and blue hockey with his kids, which he fully deserves. And in the meantime, please support Sean's great writing. His Substack is Shap Shots. EP Ringside is a terrific publication. He also writes for D Magazine. If you're looking for a good hockey, still chilly out there in DFW, if you're looking for a good hockey movie, it's the Late Game Movie, where you can see Sean in net. How about a book, We Win Here? He co-wrote with Stephen Meserve, so that's great as well. He's all over the place. You can find all the outlets just by going to his Twitter/X at Sean Shapiro. I'm Gavin Spittle of 1053 The Fan. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with another episode soon. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day, everyone.